This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast, and this is a very special edition. We've got Leo Carver with us. He's the author of this new wonderful book, Growing Consciousness. Welcome to Impact, Leo.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Listen, Leo, I'm in Fresno, California today, which is part of the Ag Belt of the United States now and the Ag Center, and you're in beautiful Kentucky.
Yes, sir.
Which is one of my favorite states in our whole beautiful nation. And so I wish I was with you in Kentucky in person today. I got to tell you that. I do wish. But Leo, before we get talking about this wonderful book, and as our listeners and viewers can see, I've read it. I loved it. I've marked it up pretty good like I like to do with books. Talk a little bit about your journey. Where did you grow up and where did you get educated, and how did this whole thing unfold for you before you even got to the point of writing this great book?
Oh, good question. Thank you. My journey has kind of been an interesting one, I'd say, if I could say so myself, just because I grew up as a military Army brat. As we like to say, where both my parents were soldiers in the Army, and retired from the Army, did full 20 plus years. So wow. Salute to those that serve, and I'm always in tune with that community for that reason. And so anyway, as growing up as an Army brat, up until about the age of 10, I grew up in Germany. Wow. And so that was kind of a difference for me, to where it gave me a different vantage point on America, and a lot of things that, I was introduced to, growing up, I didn't really face until I was here at, 10 years old. And so I mentioned that just to say that a lot of what allowed me to kind of explore other avenues and open my mind was that travel and that exposure to other cultures, early on. And so, and then, growing up, I kind of always wanted to go into the medical field. And I just didn't have the drive to really go strictly with, what we allopathic medicine. It didn't catch me that way. But then somewhere along the way, when I was in college, I went to Kentucky State University here, one of this nation's first HBCUs. Is actually here in Kentucky. A lot of people don't know that, and that's where I graduated from. I went there and graduated with a psychology degree, just because I've always been, even from young, I was kind of always a spiritual person per se, if you want to use that term. I've always been into the ways of consciousness and understanding the mind. And, as far as the academic, what's out there, that was kind of the closest vein was psychology or something in that field of philosophy, And so anyway, after graduating, shortly after that, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And that put a halt to a lot of things for me. And it made me have to really pause and look at my health. It's not that I was the least healthy person in the world, but I did have some habits that were not, conducive to, a good regimen and a healthy life. And based on what I know now, is horrible, and I was able to change
yourself the best chance.
That's right. And so while battling through that, and it took them years, as many people with irritable bowel diseases and autoimmune issues will probably attest to, it took them a long time to actually figure out what the problem was. And so while I was going through that, My wife was already starting her journey as a teacher, and we went to this. It was our first Chopra event. I want to say it was the Seduction of Spirit. Yes, one of their signature events. And I was just blown away because while this particular program was not focused on Ayurveda in particular, it was mentioned and it just kind of piqued my interest. It's like, oh, you know what? I'm trying to take a look at my diet anyway. I'm learning about all these different herbal medicines and alternative therapies, and it just kind of caught me, and then we went on that track, and I went through their program there, graduated from their program, and went on to kind of write for their blog and things for a while, and continued to collaborate with them. And along the way of this, just to kind of get us to the point of where we are now with this book, right? So as I was studying this information that comes from teachers like Dr. Deepak Chopra and others that are involved at the center, and really getting into a deeper meditation practice and trying this stuff out, really putting it into practice and putting in the work.
Right.
I was also simultaneously kind of spending more time hiking, and doing the things that I always enjoyed because, once again, I grew up in Germany. Very similar to Kentucky, there's still so much land that is like, you can go out there and it's just beautiful. There's very little traffic, it's open space. And that's what I was used to seeing as a child. So I was starting to kind of revisit that on my own wellness journey at the same time, and part of that, especially in terms of learning how to grow my own herbs and food, those things were happening simultaneously. And I just started writing about it more. When I would write for blogs, I would bring subjects up about gardening and herbalism. And, from there, it kind of just grew into this book,
Let's step back and unpack some of this. First of all, when you moved
there's
from
a
Germany, that was great though. When you moved from Germany with your parents to the States, did you move directly to Kentucky and you grew up in Kentucky then?
No. And actually, let's see. I've lived in Oklahoma. I've lived in Texas for a few years. I lived in California, and then there's still a piece of California in my heart always, because that was a very formative time in my life. That I actually lived out in the desert. I was out in the Mojave, in the Barstow area.
Sure.
And so, but still, I just there's so much about the state and that the land out there that I loved. And so anyway, and then from there we moved to Kentucky. And I've probably been here the longest, and I've planned. This is where my wife and I met, and we had our started our family here, and so this is home. It has been for a while, but I've kind of traveled a lot.
And just so we're clear, your wife's name is Dr. Melissa Carver, and you can find you and your wife at drmelissacarver.com.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So also, when you were growing up, was your mom or dad a gardener at the time? Did they enjoy? Was there any gardening going on in the household at that time?
No, and it's interesting because it's one of my joys that I get out of this book and everything is watching my parents discover these things. Because one thing that I've noticed in speaking with a lot of people across the generations, especially the last, let's say 3 generations or so, is that I'll just speak on my own family. My grandparents, they always maintained a garden and, farmed. And, if you go back even a generation or 2 back, they were sharecroppers and things. And so, that is somewhere in my blood, but my parents kind of maybe in their own way rebelled against that.
Right.
I
get it.
Let's go out here and be successful and, get in the rat race and, just didn't have time for those things or weren't inclined that way. And so I kind of picked it back up somewhere intuitively and found my love for it. Now I get to teach them and watch them as they're getting older kind of say, you know what, there is something to that, and I really enjoy that.
That's so nice. And it's nice when then the student becomes the teacher.
Oh, always.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned something that I want you to unpack for our listeners. You were at the Chopra Center for one of your first intensives and first, and you mentioned Ayurvedic medicine, and I assume you also learn meditation there. Talk about the Ayurvedic side of it and what that really means, practically speaking.
Yes. Okay. So that's that's definitely a lot to unpack there.
Well,
we're talking about a 5,000-year-old science.
Well, there you go.
A living
itself
science.
is
At that, a living
yeah.
science is still
Yeah.
always evolving. But what I love about Ayurveda is that it's it's this ancient and very detailed and skillful science of herbalism, and is based on the elements. The five elements: space, air, fire, water, earth. And the idea that each one of us is a microcosm of the macrocosm that is the universe, and it kind of goes back to the belief system that can be found in ancient Egyptian or Kemetic society, where it's the idea that as above, so below. These things are kind of common in the the lingo of the consciousness community, and it's
Right.
the same truth being conveyed there, that basically all these elements that you see in the world and the way they interact, they're doing the same thing in your body to some degree in some ways that we can pinpoint using these theories of the doshic theory, where certain elements pair in different ways. You may have heard the terms of like Vata, Pitta, Kapha. They're starting to become a little bit more common as Ayurveda is growing here in the West. But once you understand what your particular composition is, you can live with that awareness and make choices that ultimately bring greater health. Because with having the awareness of your own balance and your own constitution, how other things. I'm trying to really kind of figure out how to put it, but in a simple term, the way the elements within you interact with the elements in the world. If you're aware of that, you can make choices based on that, whether it's your diet, even the clothes you wear and the colors you keep around you, your sleep patterns, everything. There's a full, really lifestyle in a sense that goes along with that understanding. And so there's so much to it.
So so you adopted that lifestyle. You and your wife adopted that lifestyle.
Yes, sir. And see, I'm kind of more possibly because I was dealing with my condition and applying a lot of these things directly. I have I'd say I have a deeper connection to that side of things. But yes, we both went through the training in that school, and I've just furthered my education in it.
Leo, I want to go on to the book in a second, but talk about how in your journey has the meditation that you not only learn but teach now. We will talk about that in a little bit, and also your improved eating and lifestyle habits with that 5,000 years of history to go with it. The science is real. How much has your condition improved because of the combination of spirituality and lifestyle changes that you've made during this wonderful journey?
Oh, tremendously. I'm always, anytime that I see a client, or even when I'm just being asked about, any kind of bowel issues, any kind of autoimmune issues, those two in particular, I say I've really hit something, on the head here. This is really, I know that in one way or another, these methods will help anyone dealing with these things, especially anything autoimmune, because you're essentially talking about a disconnect, between your immune system and what's going on in your body. And so meditation has this unparalleled capability of getting those systems within you to sync up. It's been studied, at length at this point, and there's still studies being conducted for those that, for whatever reason, aren't believers yet, because, one of the things about meditation, I feel is a misconception. A lot of people that I speak with, especially working here in the Bible Belt, people have this idea that meditation is religious, and it is for some people, but what we teach and the way we were trained is to teach for lack of better words, a secular version of that, a way that is accessible to anyone.
Right.
That, whatever your spirituality is,
of course,
it fits. It's not in
right,
competition with anything.
right.
And so, and I enjoy being able to share that with people, because when you see those barriers come down and you see that lightness come over their face, and you can just tell that their heart rate is slowed, it's amazing. And in our day and age, most of us need some form of that, some more than others, but I think it's
Amen.
good for everyone to do, some form of it.
So really, Leo, I want to sum that up then.
Mm-hmm.
There's hope. There's more. It's proven now there's more autoimmune disease on the rise, whether it's psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis, MS, Crohn's disease. This stuff is real and it's growing. Yeah. And traditional medicine's not having a lot of success with it. But I want our audience to see that with folks like you leading the charge, your generation taking the new application of ancient and historically proven scientific spirituality, meditation, and Ayurvedic eating and living ways, people can improve what they've been told is a chronic and hopeless condition. They can greatly improve it.
Yes, sir. Yes, they can. And for me, I feel like I believe there's a balance.
Right.
And I, if your condition is serious enough, or depending on what the situation is, it may be necessary for you to,
right.
Follow doctor's instructions and take certain medications, but you can
right.
greatly reduce the amount of medications,
right.
for sure. And
right.
Especially with the dietary side of things and what comes along with Ayurvedic medicine. And then, the stress relief, the things we put ourselves through to try to handle stress, you are helping yourself out tremendously, no matter who you are, if you can
right.
lessen your inflammation, inwardly and outwardly.
Right.
And meditation is great for that.
Well, let's get to your book. When did you decide? Yeah. When was your aha moment, Leo, that I got to take everything I'm doing now and everything I've learned, and instead of just writing a blog, write a book? This book is called The Growing Consciousness, The Gardener's Guide to Seeding the Soul. You can find it on barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, and other great book-selling websites and bookstores around the United States and the world. When did you dream this up and have that I got to do this moment?
To be honest with you, it kind of came to me. As I said, it was all very, very intuitive. I have to, I personally believe in the grand design and things. And, when I first started writing about it, I didn't know that those subjects would be as popular as they ended up being. They would attract the attention that they did. And so seeing that grow and connecting with others on that, connecting with a wonderful publisher, Mandala, it just all came together, and I'm thankful that it has. And, it's just it's timely, and I've gotten that feedback from a lot of people. I didn't write this with that in mind, to me, it feels like a very ego thing to say, like, oh, I did this timely work, but
right.
I didn't think of it that way as I was doing it. But I realized seeing the impact that, like,
right.
No, there's a lot of people who feel this way. And, it has struck a nerve with, I've been surprised, even within my own family and friend circles, people who they've never talked about growing their own vegetables or, doing any of this stuff. And definitely haven't talked about meditating in the garden or having a relationship with the plants in their house,
right,
and
right.
They're reading this and they're saying, oh, wow, no, or it's really a cool thing when somebody comes to me and they say, I've always done that. And, maybe they just never realized that they were doing it with a spiritual intention. It's like, I've always talked to my plants, it's kind of like my therapy. It's like, there's something to doing that with intention. And that's the kind of things that I point out,
Right. And you were really writing from the heart about your own experiences and what was really on your heart. But the truth be known is the timeliness of it is people really needed to hear this and no one had merged. Yeah. It's, I get sent a lot of books on interesting topics. I've never seen a book on gardening and spirituality and meditation all together. And it's a fascinating merging of important topics.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I wish I could take credit for it. There are others doing the work, but it's definitely a field that needs more attention for sure.
For our listeners and our viewers that read this great book, what do you want them to take away? Like, if you could sum up what you want the takeaway to be from, growing consciousness, what do you want them to learn or take and work with in the world after they put down the book?
That's a great question. Because there's so much, but I think ultimately, I want people to walk away from this with a greater understanding and appreciation for life in general. There's a focus on the garden and the relationship with plants and plant life, but really it's about finding that growth within yourself and understanding that through gardening, you are literally part of the life process of another being, and that while, you could put that in perspective however you like, in terms of, this being a living creature, but it is, and you are in this relationship with it where it's producing something that's going to feed you. And all the while you're taking care of it. And, they just in general, like, I'd like for people to look at those actions as well as the overall relationship with nature and see that there's something deeper there, and see that, although I don't like the term, I'm a proud tree hugger. Everybody doesn't necessarily have to go to that extreme, like the way I feel about it, but we can deepen our appreciation as a whole, as a species, of this planet and the things when we realize that, these same elements are within my life and within my body, and they manifest in these ways. The way this happens to the weather on certain days affects me and my inner world, and just kind of gaining a better understanding of our oneness with everything.
Right.
And hopefully from that will grow into a deeper appreciation of our oneness for each other. But, if we can start from something many people would like to do anyway, let's just spend time out there. And so I guess that to sum it up, I guess that's my overall takeaway that I hope people get from it, is just the overall appreciation for life, and that you are part of that process, and that you can be a more active participant in it for yourself and for your family and those that you affect.
Before we talk about the merger of those two important topics, let's break it down and make it simple for our listeners and viewers who want to begin journeys in both. Let's start with meditation. You teach meditation. If there's listeners and viewers that have heard about it for a long time and thought it was a little woo-hoo, but now realize maybe they need something extra, the pandemic's put extra external pressure on every one of us, no matter who we are and what walk of life and where we sit or what we do. Everyone's had more externalities than they've ever been faced with. And, I found to lean on meditation more during the last 2 years than I ever had in the previous 10 years. And I still liked it then, but now I really depend on it more. Where does a person start a journey in meditation if they're interested but don't know where to begin?
Well, there's so many different modalities of meditation, and so one of the things I always encourage others to do is kind of explore the full gamut of what's out there. Because one of the reasons why some don't connect with it right away is because they may have, let's say, they discovered meditation through a Buddhist technique that doesn't necessarily register with them,
right?
Or they mantra sometimes is hard for some people to deal with, because there's mantras where there's this long string of, this consciousness that you're impregnating in yourself. Right. And sometimes it's just a sound, and so, I would recommend exploring it for one thing, but, really, the most basic and the simplest way to access the gifts of meditation, in my opinion, is more in tune with what we would call mindfulness today, where it's just being present, staying with the breath, and just like, just literally imagine and follow the breath as you're breathing deeply, and close your eyes and take some time to just be quiet. And, there's some simple things that you can do that traditionally are part of almost any kind of meditation technique. And if you could just start with those simple things, and then the breath is one of them. And it's something that's accessible to everyone. We all, can tap in and out of control with our breath. And if you do that consciously and just slow it down, and, that alone is half the work. And then, there's other things you can get into, sound meditation and things like that are very cool. And I recommend those too, but they're not for everybody.
Right.
But as far as the overall stress relief, it's just about breathing, It really
Something
is.
that simple. It's that simple. Let's talk about gardening then. So I'm a guy who's never had a green thumb, but I've always admired my friends that have these beautiful, lush gardens, and it looks like a reality TV show, what they're growing in their backyard. How does someone begin and not feel so out of place and clumsy about it, starting their own garden? How does that happen?
Okay, well, I'll just take you through my journey a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
So I was very similar. I've always, loved plants, especially exotic plants, and seeing all the colors and the smells, and all that. But I never really had ventured into gardening, and really like developing a green thumb. And so the first time what I did was, I went to a local nursery, and I just picked out some good looking starter plants, and just kind of just did a lot of it just intuitively. I just stuck it in the ground, went out there and watered it.
What did you grow first? What was the first things you grew?
Well, the first thing I had success with, and I'd say most gardeners could probably agree, was tomatoes. They're so friendly, like in terms of like they're forgiving.
They're forgiving.
Plants, especially outdoors. If you can keep it outdoors, as long as it's getting sun and it's not getting bruised or attacked by insects, it's good to go. And I actually talk quite a bit about tomatoes in the book, just because they are one of the plants, because they are so common, that they have been extensively studied about their reactivity to the environment and the consciousness that actually is present in them, in the choices they make, so to speak. And, but tomatoes, and, it was more or less your basics, corn, tomatoes, cucumbers, and then, as I said, this was a journey, and this is something I kind of developed each season, got a little deeper into it.
Right.
And where I was learning, when I was going through my training for Ayurvedic medicine as a counselor, I wanted to try different herbs. So like, I grew sage. I think that's what I had success with that right away, and to this day, it's one of my favorite plants, just because it's another one that's so forgiving, and it's it's the smells, and you could use it for different medicines around the house and things for yourself. So I don't want to, I could talk about it forever.
That's great.
But I'd say those were the first ones that I really had success with, and was able. See, I think it's important that for those of us that don't necessarily feel that we have a green thumb in the beginning, to have success with something. Right. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to, even if it's not something that's going to provide you food. Just I was able to keep this plant alive through a whole season, and
it's a confidence builder. It's a huge confidence builder.
Definitely. And once you do that, you can kind of branch out. That's more or less what I did. And I was just wasn't afraid to try different things,
Right. And right now, like if I went into your backyard with you, what's growing right now? Like we've walked into your backyard.
Unfortunately, one of the downsides, as beautiful as it is here to living in Kentucky, is we're not far from the season. Normally around, for us it's Derby, around like the end of April, 1st of May.
Right.
You know all about Derby.
I know the Derby.
That's when it's time to have all your plants in your garden and your crops and stuff ready to go. And right now, most people are doing starters, in the house and stuff. If you're into that side of it, but So right now I don't have anything. There's actually a few herbs that are able, like my sage, that are able to survive with these milder winters we've been having the last few years. But I don't, unfortunately, I have a bunch of indoor plants right now. That's been my way of compensating, you know.
And Leo, how long did it take you to write this great book?
Um, Roughly, I'd say roughly 9 months or so.
Okay.
But interesting thing about that, and a part of my journey that when you asked me a little while ago,
Yeah.
I kind of skipped right over,
Right.
was that at the time of writing that book, I was working constantly. I had a job where, I was working 10, 12 hours a day, and so it took a lot of dedication to really like, sit down and so I bring that up just to say that it's the kind of thing that because of my love for it, it really poured out of me. And then, I
Right.
say 9 months, but it didn't feel like it.
And you were speaking from your heart. This is what was on your mind and heart.
Yeah.
Talk about what you and your wife do now. You have a practice together. Do you guys, and what do? You coach people on health and wellness, or explain what your practice is about, and how does it different from each other, and how does it merge together with each other?
So one of the reasons why our partnership is teachers and writers kind of works is because, while we know a little bit about each other's specialties, she's more involved in when it comes to mindset, dealing with the mental aspects of stress, trauma, helping people work through those issues and dealing with things from that angle. And then for me, while it definitely involves some of that, I'm going to approach things more from a dietary standpoint. I do touch on the mental because meditation is such a big part of it, but more so for building the practice, not so much to dig into your, not the heavy duty therapy like she would do, but
right.
Just more so to encourage the practice of meditation and kind of give you the tools to work those things out. And so that's kind of how things break down in terms of how we work together. Is we do classes, sometimes these one-off events, on a weekend or something like that. We also have our retreat, our annual Rejuvenation Retreat we have coming up.
Talk a little
July
bit about
29th.
That.
Yes, I love this event. We started doing this a few years ago, and it's just grown every year. And basically, we call it the Rejuvenation Retreat. It's from July 29th to July 31st, so that whole weekend. And what we do is we teach on different subjects each year. We bring in outside teachers and speakers, and one of my favorite parts of it that I love is that we have incorporated outdoor activities and into, so you're not just coming in. If you come to this event, you're not just getting instruction or sitting down and meditating all day. You're also going to kayak, you're going to hike. We offer massages and different kind of self-care therapies that come with each ticket and that you can add on if you want to, if you have that kind of space in your time and in between classes and stuff. And we always try to incorporate music and, try to make it a holistic, well-rounded experience. But I really love it because much like the book, it's another expression of marrying nature to spirituality for me. That's kind of what I get out of it. Because while I love gardening and I focus on gardening primarily in the book, as I said, it's really about nature in general, and that's always a good time of year for us to get out there, get to meet some new folks from all over the country and just come out there and have a good time and get this centeredness and get this rejuvenated spirit together. And
how many people come to your retreat?
We're normally floating somewhere around 50 to 100. Of course, it's kind of grown, and I take pride in that because we've operated through COVID, so far,
wow.
Which has definitely had its challenges, and we've still been able to get a pretty good turnout. But it's definitely something that we're growing, and we're going to add more on to each year.
And where do you host it? Where is it? Where is the retreat physically at?
Yeah, now see, that's the other great part about this. It's at the Shakers Village in Harrodsburg. I don't know if you're familiar with the Harrodsburg area, but the Shakers were one of the early Puritan faiths that came here to this country. So, you know, when you're talking about the Quakers, you know, and trying to think of some other groups, but I think you know where I'm going with that. The Amish, you know, when you think about those more Puritan, very fundamental groups, and this was one that was based here in Kentucky, or a large community of them were, and they built this community in Harrodsburg that it's like 3,000 acres, man, of just gorgeous, just rolling hills. You know, Kentucky. Yeah. So it's right in the heart of that. And you to yourself, there's waterfalls. Beautiful. And when, you know, my wife and I, we visited just as a little getaway for ourselves once, and we just fell in love with it. We said, we have to do, you know, the idea was kind of already there. Right. It's like, we have to do this here. And it's been successful each time. Because, I mean, even, you know, just taking away even from the great activities, the people you're going to meet, the instruction you're going to get, just being out there for a whole weekend, away from your, you know, whatever you got going on business-wise or routine. At home, or getting away from your routine. You know, we've seen so many couples come out there and enjoy themselves. You could tell that, you know, did something for them as a marriage. We've seen families even come, and I mean, it's just a really good experience and something that I'm proud of, and I look forward to growing. You know, because
that's wonderful.
It's one of those gifts of this kind of work that I get just as much out of it, you know, so it's good to see it touch people. And people could sign up or learn more about it at drmelissacarver.com, right? At your wife's website, drmelissacarver.com. Yes. Yes, and of course, we're always on our socials, you know, promoting it if you follow any of our stuff. So where can they find you on social, Leo? Well, on Instagram, I'm just leo.carver. Okay. And also Leo Carver on Facebook. You know, really, if you look up Leo Carver and put Ayurveda, meditation, any of this stuff in there, you'll find me. and then when people want to sign up to become a student of yours or a patient of yours, is it done mostly because of COVID now over Zoom and all done electronically? Yes. Unfortunately, because you do, while we still make the best out of it, you do kind of lose a little something, you know, having to do human touch. Yeah, exactly. But yes, we do most of it virtual now. Leo, what's your vision for the book? And you're a young man still. And what's your vision for the future? With now that you have this book behind you and it's wonderful and it's being well received and it's really very meaningful, what are you going to do next? Like, what's your vision for the next couple of years? Oh, you know, it's funny because you're talking to you know, I teach living in the moment. Yeah. So, you know, it's an interesting question I always have to think about, but it's a good one. It's you know, I definitely want to continue the work I'm doing. Right. You know, and you know, produce more work, more than likely at least a couple more books on this subject. And just kind of continue to work with others to build programs. And, you know, I'd even like to eventually get into possibly some products and different things that can also help, you know, like merge like the tech world and things. There's so many possibilities. And we're at a time when it's needed and that it's just wide open. So I'm kind of just open to exploring more and putting more of this work out there and meeting others that are on the path as well and working together. And if people want to sign up for your services to be a student or a patient of yours, where's the best place for them to find you? Well, as I mentioned, Instagram, Facebook. Yeah, any of those social media accounts would be good, or you can also contact me by email, which would be leocarver.vedic@gmail.com. That's one way to get a hold of me. Perfect. So. Well, Leo, this
You're just a joy and a pleasure. This book
Thank
is
you.
really,
You too,
really
sir.
special. And I'm going to be recommending it to our listeners and to our followers. And this is really a great book. And I wish you continued success for our viewers and listeners out there. It's called Growing Consciousness, The Gardener's Guide to Seeding the Soul. You can find it on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and other great bookstores around the United States. He's Leo Carver. If you want to get a little bit more into your mind and also appreciate this wonderful earth that we live on and the soil beneath our feet, sign up to be with Leo. Go to his retreat and Melissa's retreat, drmelissacarver.com, or just introduce yourself over Instagram or Facebook. Leo Carver, you're making a difference. You're making the world a better place. Thank you for joining us today on the Impact Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com.